Dear Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to you all. It's my great pleasure to just give a very short emphasis on the short welcome today to this launch event of the Migration Policy Centre. To start with, I want to thank and also to congratulate Philippe Fargue, who's the director of the Centre, and the organisers of the conference. I'd like particularly to welcome Commissioner Malmström, whose presence here is a great honour, and the many external speakers and participants in this event, some of which, of course, have travelled a long way, and when we appreciate that. Now, I'm not going to list everybody, but I'd like particularly to welcome and to mention Jeff Crisp of the UNHCR, Bella Hovey from the United Nations, Hervé Lebras from INED in Paris, Heba Nassar from the University of Cairo, Kagla Ozden from the World Bank, Dimitrios Papadimitriou from the Migration Policy Institute in Washington, Dil Ratha from the World Bank, Paul Statham from Sussex, Anatoly Vishnevsky from the National Research University, Klaus Zimmermann from the University of Bonn. A very warm welcome to all of you and also to the other speakers and discussants. I'm very happy that we're able to host this event during which the Migration Policy Centre is going to present the results of research on developments which profoundly affect migration and the way that migration is perceived within Europe and the rest of the world. Of course, you all know I'm speaking to, in a way, an audience of the converted. Migration is one of the most important issues that we're facing today. Its social, economic, political implications are at the top of national agendas and also the European political agenda. And it's a topic which is engaging academics, but also policymakers and citizens. Migration, I think, presents both an opportunity and a considerable challenge. It can be seen as a threat to the social and political foundations of both sending and receiving countries, but it can also contribute to the prosperous development of both. For the European Union, migration policy is central to its strategies for growth and competitiveness, and it's an essential element of the Europe 2020 strategy. But as the events of 2011 remind us, it also has an important external dimension. The global approach to migration and mobility, which was launched in 2005 and then revised last year, seeks to ensure that migration is integrated into the thematic and geographic external policies of the European Union, as well as integrating different aspects of migration policy and the policies and instruments of the EU, its member states, and its partner countries. The two issues that this particular Migration Policy Centre event focuses on represent both the internal and the external dimensions of migration policy. First, the question, does the current employment crisis in the European Union open up opportunities to reassess the role of migration and its relation to EU labour markets? And second, what will be the implications of the Arab Spring for European policymaking in the area of migration? These are two fundamental questions, but they're only two questions out of many very important questions which need research and the kind of evidence-based policy making which this Migration Policy Centre is designed to provide. For those of you who don't know the EUI so well, let me just say two words about the Institute. It has three main pillars, as we normally say. The first two of the pillars constitute the largest doctoral and postdoctoral social sciences programs in Europe. We focus on training doctoral and postdoctoral researchers on research who are engaged in research with direct relevance for European societies. We also have the third pillar of the EUI, which is the Robert Schuman Centre of Advanced Studies. Stefano Bartolini on my left is the director of that centre, and that is engaged in interdisciplinary, fundamental policy-relevant research. And it is the Robert Schuman Centre which hosts the Migration Policy Centre. We play around with this notion of centres within centres in this institute. Here at the Institute, many of our doctoral researchers and postdoc researchers and in the different departments and programs work on the issue of migration, and a number of our professors in different disciplines are active in the field and collaborate both with each other and with the Migration Policy Centre. So it's very much a centre which is going to, and which does already, bring together research work that is carried out in the Institute as a whole. The Robert Schuman Centre for many years has led projects on migration, the Karim Project, Miriam, the Medica Project, for example. And the establishment of the Migration Policy Centre will help to consolidate these efforts and to raise the level, our capacity for research in the field of migration to a new level. And for me, that's a very important part of what the centre is designed to do. So with the generous support of the European Union, the Centre will conduct research on global migration issues. It will monitor and analyse migration-related policies of the European Union, its member states and third states, and their social and economic impacts. It will collaborate with a worldwide network of scholars, as we see here today. It will bring together the academic community and policymakers, and will become a leading actor in researching the causes and consequences of migration, measuring migration, and analysing the governance of migration. That's its mission, and I have full confidence in its successful carrying out and development of that mission. Now, that's all that I want to say. I don't want to take any longer. I would like now to give the floor to Lucio Battistotti, who's from the European Commission office in Rome, who's going to say a few words, and then my colleague Stefano Bartolini will say a couple of words, and we'll hand the floor to the Commissioner after that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marisa. So thank you very much for inviting me here in Florence, and let me pronounce some words on to underline the importance for the Commission, for the European Commission, and particularly for the representation of the European Commission in Italy to be here for the launching event of the Migration Policy Centre. Migration policy at the EU and national levels is one of the hottest topics in the current political debate, and the impact of migration is constantly discussed in the media across Europe. In this context, European research on migration can enhance the quality of policy making and better inform public debate. This is very important for us, for our day-by-day job. Since the Amsterdam Treaty came into force in 1999, the EU has developed its competence in the policy fields of asylum and migration through the implementation of the different programs, the Tampere program, the Hague program, and then the Stockholm program. Alongside the development of common policies, EU enlargement to 27 member states has stimulated labour migration within the EU. In the context of the demographic aging, with increased longevity and decreasing fertility rates of the EU population, migration is now the largest component of population change in most member states. The speed of change and the dynamic nature of current migration flows are a real challenge to policymakers who need to base their decision on a good quality system. Some member states, like Italy, Spain, Malta, Greece, and Cyprus, are directly exposed to immigration flows, in particular to irregular ones. It is not, however, a problem only at national level, but a phenomenon that must be tackled at EU level, and that requires genuine solidarity between member states. Migration represents both an opportunity and a challenge. While well-managed migration may foster progress and welfare both in the country of origin and of destination, its mismanagement may put social cohesion, security, and national sovereignty at risk. Sound policy making on migration and related matters must be based on knowledge and at the same time address policy priorities. Since migration is rapidly evolving, knowledge thereof needs to be constantly updated. In fact, the current prevailing approach to policy making by many governments is that policy decision should be supported by evidence. It follows that migration policy decision should be based on accurate and reliable data in the field of migration. Given that migration links each country to the rest of the world, the phenomenon can only be analyzed through a strong cooperation between member states. I wish every success to the Migration Policy Center established at the European University Institute. I'm certain that the MPS will provide policymakers and relevant stakeholders with a discussion platform to design tools, program, and practice, as well as with better methodologies to address the challenges of migration and to improve migration governance. In conclusion, I wish to emphasize once more that immigration affects all member states. Therefore, to face this phenomenon, we need a joint answer which can be shared by the whole Union. This is therefore a project that the EU and the Member States must build together. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to everybody. My welcome would be really short. I don't want to take up time to Commissioner, and we're all looking for her words. I simply wish you a good conference for the next couple of days. I simply welcome you all here at the European University Institute in the name of the Robert Schuman Center. And I would like to express my thanks to all those people, many of which are in this room, who have made possible today. And certainly I will start from Commissioner Malmström, who has been the finalizing, the scorer of a long process started in 2008. I still remember Mr. Frattini announcing something that was far away in terms of capacity to set up. So it was 4 years ago, and Commissioner Malmström gave the final hit to that. But I would also like to thank the many scholars who are sitting in this room and in various capacity, either from outside, from abroad sometimes, have given a contribution of ideas, of support, of stimulus, who have allowed us to keep stubborn and consistent in trying to set up this center. I don't want to name individuals, but indeed there are many, many, many people in this room who have helped us to finalize. And not only the scholars, but also the many, many assistants and fellows of the various projects on migration that since at least 7 years have been alternating and keeping alive the Robert Schuman Center's strong tradition in migration studies, which eventually was, I dare to believe, recognized in this moment. And last but not least, to our assistants, which very often work in the dark. And there is the only one I'll mention. We have to thank Christine Lyon. We have to thank Pauline de Piedret. We have to thank Aurélie Boussier, who was behind us in the back, And we have organized all this, and we have been working for years trying to make all events a success. And I think their contribution is as important as that of all the others. So thank you for coming and welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me to these beautiful surroundings for this very important event. And also I would like to start by thanking everybody who's worked so hard to make this day a reality. And I know it's not starting today. There's a lot of work that has been done already. So I'm looking very much forward to the rest of this work. There are not only good reasons to set up the Migration Policy Centre, but it's also extremely timely, I think. With the European Union facing, as you said, difficult challenges and a fast-changing world. Migration can help us meet those challenges, but migration is also a challenge in itself. So we have, from the European Union, to adapt to this situation. There's an ever-changing reality. There's a lot of external and internal pressure. And in that, I think there is urgent need to sometimes stop and think and get advice, and this is where the MPC really can be helpful, to help us make the good choices. I would like to start commenting briefly on the main subject that you have chosen for this event, the subject that corresponds very much to the overall priorities of EU migration, and that I am very much devoted to myself. First, the need to ensure that migration and policy and mobility support economic growth in Europe. It will not be long until this very continent will start to feel an aging population and its shrinking workforce. Without net migration, our population is shrinking, and it will have shrunk by 12% by 2030. And in just 3 years' time, in the field of information technology, we will be short of as many as 700,000 IT engineers. And by 2020, we should be short of around 2 million doctors and nurses and health professionals. And even today, with high employment all over our countries and lots of people suffering from this, of course, many member states are at the same time facing difficulties to find specific skilled workers in some sectors within the European Union. And of course, tackling unemployment must be the first priority, and we need to do a lot of reforms internally in the European Union to make sure that people can work longer, that people can switch between work, that women can work and combine, the young people can combine family and work, etc. But we will need migration. It will be not the only solution, but part of the solution in Europe in the future. We will increasingly need skilled workers and talented professionals coming from outside. And history tells us that countries who are open to this and to attract the best people, the most motivated people, are also those who compete better with other countries. And those who shut their borders will fall behind. So we need a demand-driven labour immigration policy to ensure Europe's prosperity and economic growth. We have some base already established within the European Union. We had the blue card scheme introduced some year ago. We're working to facilitate access to the EU for intra-corporate transferees. And we're also introducing fair rules for seasonal workers, because we also need non-skilled or lower skilled workers. But we need to do much more. And we are launching this end of this year a big public consultation on this subject. And I hope that MPC can make a contribution here. A second objective of EU migration policy, and something we will discuss during this conference much more, is to redefine our relationship with our neighbouring countries, to the east and to the south. Respect for human rights, respect for democratic values are basic principles upon which the EU is built. And therefore we have a special responsibility to help people who struggle against the odds to overcome oppressive regimes, even more so when they are our neighbours. Last year, when the Arab Spring broke out, the European Union failed to live up to that responsibility, to stand up for democracy, freedom and human rights. And instead of helping and running to help the countries in our immediate neighbourhood, and even more so here in Italy, we were sort of reacting in a different way. We were too concerned with our own problems. So the main focus, instead of welcoming what was happening when people were throwing out dictators and walking out in the streets and saying, we want democracy, we want freedom, the reaction from the EU was more like, wait a little, we have a crisis, so stay where you are. There was a lot to focus on securing the borders. And I think this is a historical mistake. And I really hope that we can come out of this. We missed an opportunity to show Northern African countries and the world that we were committed to defend, to stand up, and to help. And we must not repeat that mistake. And I think we are getting better now. We are redefining a little bit our policies. We are stepping up financial assistance. We are stepping up also our contribution to help the democratic transition. We are facilitating mobility. We are promoting education and movement of students with the Erasmus Mundus that will enable students to come to Europe. We are also negotiating a mobility partnership with Tunisia and Morocco, and I hope that could be signed before the end of the year. And these partnerships will hopefully take a new approach to migration. We have done lots of mistakes in the future, but I hope that the European Union now can grab these new possibilities and have a more equal-based dialogue covering all aspects of migration: trafficking, irregular migration, legal migration, asylum issues, visa facilitation, etc. We need to do this with our southern neighbours, but also with our eastern neighbours, and that's why we need to have constructive dialogues on this. The Eastern Partnership is developing quite quickly. We are working together on migration and mobility issues, and we have just recently set up a migration panel to boost multilateral cooperation in this specific area. We have mobility partnerships with Moldova, with Georgia, Armenia, and hopefully soon one with Azerbaijan. And we are also having discussions on how to liberalize our visa arrangements with Georgia, Ukraine, and Moldova. So in these ways, we have the foundations for an effective European migration policy. But we need to do more, and we need to make sure that it is mutually beneficial. And we need to adapt to our neighborhood so that our migration policy is constantly updated and responding to the changes. And that's where I see a very important role for you and for the Migration Policy Centre. For effective policy making, I see that there are 4 areas or 4 key requirements. And in all these, I am sure that the MPC can contribute. The first one is quite evidence for you as researchers here. It's evidence. Clear, strong evidence. Policies needs to be based on facts. Needs to be backed and defended by factual arguments. And this is particularly important in the field of migration policy. The impacts, the costs of migration policy are unknown, and we need a stronger evidence basis. Moreover, people fear the unknown, and a lot of populist politicians right now are quick to exploit that fear. We see a growing populist trend all over Europe, xenophobic, right-wing extremist parties who are entering elected assemblies. In fact, there has never been so many xenophobic, right-wing extremist parties in elected assemblies today since 1945. And that is affecting also the sort of traditional political parties' agenda. And these parties, they blame migrants for the economic crisis. They say that they take their jobs, that they exploit our social systems, that they are pushing down the wages. We've all heard the arguments. And this is alarmist, misleading, and wrong. And we must stand up to this. And we must also stand up to the solutions that are very simplistic and also unworkable. And the best way to do this is, of course, with strong political leadership, but also with facts. Reliable evidence. And I therefore call upon you, an MPC, to provide us with strong evidence on which to base our policy measures and which to defend them. So I know that you have already started to produce papers in this field, and I'm looking forward to more. Evidence about how migration contributes to our economies and our societies. Evidence that migrants do not steal jobs, they in fact contribute. And they do not drive down wages, and they do pay taxes and are not a burden to the public welfare system. So this is the first area. The second one is closer cooperation with our partner countries. While focusing on the European Union's markets and societies, we must not lose the bigger picture. Europe is not alone. It is only one actor on the global stage. And migration is not only to somewhere, it is also from somewhere. And in order to understand this, we need to understand both the sending and the receiving countries. All of you brought up that perspective. And that's where your expertise is very valuable for us. The Centre has connecting with so many leading academics all over the world and policymakers, also especially here in the neighboring countries. And a number of you are here today, and I'm looking forward to the debate this afternoon. And I'm looking forward for the institutes or the centres, cutting-edge research that brings us deep and clear understanding of migration, seen from both ends, so that that understanding helps us to identify the needs and how we can approach them. And this is true both for our southern neighbourhood, but also, of course, for the eastern neighbourhood. The third requirement is greater innovation. Migration is a multifaceted phenomenon. It's driven by a range of economic, political, cultural consideration, and it can bring to the European Union a lot of benefits, including greater competitiveness, if we can only make migration work in an intelligent and innovative way. So therefore we need innovative migration policies that evolve to maximize the benefits of our economies, our societies, and for the individuals, of course. And in this, we need your input, your research. So I'm really happy that the MPC is part of the European University Institute with your leading research centres in social sciences and humanities. And this can bring together the best brains in the areas, talking about demography, economics, sociology, foreign affairs, and merging that knowledge to advise, policy recommendation, a multidisciplinary approach to migration research, which is very much needed. The fourth requirement is a deeper engagement with stakeholders. Governments do not make, or should not make, decisions in isolation. We need to talk with business, industry, international organizations, academics, social society. And this is, of course, true for also us who make policy on the European level. And we need to talk to the governments of, as I said, the source and destination countries. And this kind of dialogue is, of course, already happening. I am involved in lots of dialogue with all these stakeholders on a daily basis. And it's quite informal and it's good. But maybe we need to reinforce that in a much structured way and to gather the output from these dialogues in a more coherent way. And that's where MPC can provide a very important platform on a firmer and more systematic footing. The Centre will also, I hope, become a place where EU and national governments officials can meet to discuss migration issues with academics and therefore giving new inputs and new ways of thinking. Because MPC is not just a research institute. One of its main tasks is to transform the research into policy recommendations. And that's why that's why it's called a policy centre. So the focus on policy means that we expect the Centre to come up not only with facts and insights, analysis, trends, etc., which is very important, but also with advice on the direction the EU should take, explaining why and how. And that's a huge challenge, I am aware of that. But we live in times of huge challenges, so let's rise to the occasion. Let me conclude by saying this. Migration has always been a part of Europe. Migration to Europe and migration from Europe. And this is basically an asset. This is a good thing. People moving around, people meeting each other, bringing new ideas, new culture, new social trends, new innovation, new research, new economic interchange. This is a good thing. And it gives also many people the possibility to improve their lives and chances. We must embrace those opportunities and take advantage of all these benefits, cultural, economic, social, etc. But in order to do that, we need innovative policies based on evidence, and we need to step up and defend those politics using strong, convincing arguments. And And by working closely with our partner countries to the east and to the south, and with key stakeholders here in Europe and abroad, we can and we must ensure that migration is indeed a force for innovation, a force for growth, and a force for good in the world. And I'm looking very much forward to cooperate with the Centre in all these regards, and thank you again for all the efforts that you've been put up to this, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much indeed, Commissioner. I think it was an inspiring and a really fitting start to these proceedings. I think we've got time, if you're willing, to have some questions, debate, discussion. So let me invite people from the floor, and if you could perhaps just briefly introduce yourself and try to keep your question intervention fairly brief, and then we can have time for as many as possible. Please, thank you.
Merci. Je suis Hassan Boubakri, je m'exprime en français. Je suis Hassan Boubakri de l'Université de Sousse. Alors je dois rapidement noter la déclaration de Mme Malmström disant que c'était une faute historique que l'Union européenne et que les pays européens s'étaient crispés en quelque sorte quand il y avait l'arrivée des dizaines de milliers de Tunisiens. Il faut dire que nous avons beaucoup souffert avant, le changement de 2011 en tant que défenseur des droits de l'homme, en tant que démocrate, en tant que moderniste, le silence de l'Union européenne vis-à-vis des violations des droits de l'homme par l'ancien régime. Donc, je salue cette déclaration, cette prise de position, mais il me semble que, au-delà des discours, il est important de prendre en compte aussi que nous sommes, je parle au nom de la Tunisie, nous sommes en transition. Et je sens, je l'ai dit il y a quelques jours à la délégation européenne à Tunis, je le dirai après-demain à Bruxelles dans la conférence sur Mobility Partnership Past, Present and Future, la Tunisie, n'est pas, est en période de transition. Et il me semble qu'il y a un risque, est-ce que si l'Union européenne pousse, est-ce que d'ici la fin de l'année, l'accord de partenariat soit, signé avec les mêmes administrations et avec les mêmes logiques d'avant 2011. Et je dirais qu'il faudrait peut-être travailler aussi, est-ce qu'il y a une construction, ce qu'on appelle capacity building, du côté de la Tunisie, non seulement au niveau gouvernemental et au niveau des autorités, mais aussi au niveau de la société civile, au niveau de la société. Et il me semble qu'il y a 2 points sur lesquels il y a un problème, je crois. D'abord, la Tunisie n'a pas encore une politique de migration professionnelle qui permettrait de répondre aux logiques du partenariat pour la mobilité. Et si, cette politique n'est pas bien mise en place, nous risquons de ne pas arriver aux objectifs recherchés par ce partenariat. Le deuxième élément, c'est qu'on parle beaucoup de skilled migration. Il y a 2 vitesses à prendre en compte. Gérer l'immédiat à travers, la recherche d'une intégration des migrants qui ne sont pas formés. Les dizaines de milliers de Tunisiens qui étaient arrivés à Lampedusa en 2011, 80% avaient peu de diplômes et avaient un travail précaire ou étaient au chômage. Donc, les diplômés ne sont pas nombreux. Donc, il faut travailler sur l'immigration des diplômés et sur la skilled migration pour le long terme, pour le moyen terme, excusez-moi. Pour le court terme, il faut prendre en compte aussi cet élément de la main-d'œuvre non qualifiée. Et si on ne prend pas en compte cette main-d'œuvre non qualifiée actuelle qui remplit un peu le marché du travail, on risque d'avoir les mêmes problèmes qu'en 2011. Merci beaucoup.
Oui, ok. Merci monsieur pour votre question. Justement, le but de ce partenariat de mobilité, c'est de se mettre ensemble, l'Union européenne et dans ce cas la Tunisie, pour définir ensemble les objectifs, la vitesse, les priorités, et ce sera sur un cas basé sur un cas individuel. La Tunisie apparemment a d'autres besoins que les autres pays. Il n'y a pas de hâte dans cette procédure, il n'y a pas de délai de date, c'est la qualité qui compte. Et si vous sentez que la Commission européenne pousse trop pour vraiment arriver à une signature, ben je prends ça avec moi pour retourner et pour discuter avec mes collaborateurs. Mais l'essentiel, c'est bien sûr d'avoir quelque chose de haute qualité dont tous les partenaires sont satisfaits en couvrant tous les aspects de la migration. Cela dit, bien sûr, les partenariats de mobilité ne vont pas résoudre tous les problèmes en Tunisie. Il y a des énormes, je suis tout à fait d'accord avec vous, vous connaissez beaucoup mieux que moi, des énormes problèmes de chômage, et l'industrie touristique n'a pas encore repris tout ce qu'elle a perdu après la guerre en Libye et tout cela, mais ce sera une possibilité de définir ensemble les priorités où nous pouvons contribuer et où la Tunisie sent que là aussi nous avons besoin d'une coopération européenne, et ce sera un accord individuel. Mais bien sûr, c'est mieux que c'est basé sur la qualité que sur la vitesse, bien évidemment. Donc je prends note de ce que vous avez dit et je reprends avec moi pour cette discussion mercredi que nous aurons à Bruxelles. Merci.
Thank you. Hi. I'm here. I'm Delphine Perrin. I'm a research fellow at the Migration Policy Center. Thank you very much for your speech. It was good to hear that. I have a question concerning the role of the European Commission, because you acknowledged about this historical mistake last year. I think that the EU member states have not changed since last year. They have still the same difficult situation, the same position. They still want to push back people. Italy has signed this new agreement with Libya to resume the cooperation concerning against irregular migration, etc. Nothing has changed. So can you give us some hope concerning the role of the European Commission? Last year, we can say that the European Commission was unable to present some initiative that would have gone a bit against EU member states. So what can change now, and why? Why would be what would the condition would be different now to so that you can do something, even if the states have not changed?
But I think the European is actually pushing a lot so that there would be change. I mean, this whole new approach, global approach to migration, but also these mobility partnership and these new approach incorporating with our friends in Northern Africa is a reflection of the change we think is needed there. But still, of course, in order to, and we can do some deals and some arrangements and some partnership, that we can do. But in order to really have heavy weight behind it, of course, we are depending on member states to deliver, to stand up to these, to open their borders for facilitation of visa to more students, to legal migration, and also to make sure that, well, pushback is illegal in all terms of it. And you're also aware, of course, of the court conviction against Italy in this, because it's against the international conventions, not only European law. And the mood in the European member states is difficult at the moment. The governments are still more focused in border control and fighting, as they say, illegal migration, than also opening for legal migration and asylum seekers and people in need of protection. To a certain extent, we are trying to push in another direction. There are some allies who are trying to work with this as well among the member states, but the big changes will probably not come until the economic crisis is, if not over, at least a light in the tunnel, because that affects very much as well the priorities of member states. So it's a constant struggle, and that's why we're also depending on input from you to give evidence and to give recommendations on how we can move this forward. But the Commission we can act, we can put proposals, but we cannot push through a lot of decisions if the member states just don't want to cooperate. That's the sad truth.
Yeah. Thank you very much. My name is Bela Hovey. I work at the United Nations in New York. Thank you very much for your contribution and your speech, Madam Commissioner. Next year, probably in September, the United Nations General Assembly will hold what is called a high-level dialogue on international migration and development. You will remember that in 2006, that process, the first high-level dialogue, kicked off a lot of global migration initiatives. At the time, the European Commission was also very much involved. I remember there was, I think, a communication or a paper, and I think it was the start of your global approach. My question is, and you have referred to many informal dialogues that you support and stimulate. Someone the other day compared these dialogues to a lunch, and they said, yes, it's nice to have lunch and to talk to each other, and that's the whole purpose of these dialogues. And I was thinking about it later, and I thought, yes, there's a difference, however, between a lunch among family members and a business lunch. And I think these are really business lunches, and so my question is, these dialogues, are they leading to something? Can we identify some issues that we can take forward at the global scale in the United Nations next year? So my question actually to you is the EU thinking of doing another communication or thinking of providing input to the high-level dialogue next year at the General Assembly, knowing that, as we were reminded this morning by our colleague Dimitri, most of the migration issues are at the in the bilateral sphere, many are in the regional sphere, and the global governance, the global sphere is of course very limited in scope and impact. But still, I think that after 7-8 years of experiences since the first high-level dialogue, it's time to see what all those dialogues, informal processes have yielded, and whether there are already some ideas in the Commission, and if not, whether you will present some of those ideas next year. Thank you.
Well, we will certainly try to do that. We have not drafted any communication or paper so far, and I agree with you that there's a lot of bilateral but also regional, but there are certainly issues that need to be discussed on the global arena, how to cope with migration in a way also the need to, from a global perspective, have this integrative approach that we see foreign policy, migration, trade, development policy in a much more coordinated way. I think this is something that we have all not done enough, and this is an issue where the United Nations truly can contribute. We have already, of course, a lot of dialogue with UNHCR and other UN bodies in order to try to cooperate as much as possible with them, but we certainly see how we can contribute to your dialogue, and I'll be happy we can talk afterwards maybe on the deadlines and on the process of this, so we can fill in and to make sure that we give the maximum support to what you're trying to do.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Libby Bochy, University of Florence, and temporarily at the Italian Senate. I have two questions. The first question concerns the passage between North Africa and Europe. Now, if you compare mortality on the slave ships between the Gulf of Guinea and America in mid-18th century, they were higher than the mortality, lower than the mortality rate between North Africa and Southern Europe, the regular passages through in the seaside. Now, my question is there any chance that European countries and international organizations might set up in North Africa, particularly in Libya, centers, or whatever the name will be, where migrants attempting the irregular passage to Europe might present their demand for asylum or international protection, instead of risking their lives with the illegal passage to Europe through the sea? This is the first question. Second question concerns the deplorable state of asylum policies in Europe. Now, I know that the Union is doing something or trying to do something in 2012 and maybe in 2013 in order to harmonize policies in the 27 countries. You have countries where rejections are 90% and countries where rejections are 40 or 30%. So there is a complete mess in the criteria for accepting or refusing protection. So this is a very important point, I think. And the second important point is also the reform of Dublin II. Now, Dublin II is something that's really a big distortion in European policies concerning asylum. I know that there are many European countries that really are deaf to any reform in a more rightful way. But well, we always have some hope, and we hope that the forceful commissioner might make a little bit of difference in the future management of asylum policies in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Lots of questions there. On all the people dying on their way to Europe, this is of course a horrible thing. And this is why we must also fight trafficking of human beings. I was in Tunisia a little bit, well, around a year ago, and I met with people who explained to me how this works and how they pay and how they are sent into these boats with not even a map, or under conditions that are totally deplorable, and we know how many thousands have drowned on the Mediterranean. So we must, of course, fight the trafficking aspect of this. But one way also, why are people willing to pay so much money? Why are they willing to take the risk? Well, because it is so difficult to get legally to Europe. So we must open up legal ways. But that's where the member states are very hesitant today. And we've been pushing for this for quite some long time. We are seeing whether we can, at least on a preliminary basis or a pilot basis, open some sort of centers where we could have skill matching, where people could come and we could help them to get legally. I know that Tunisia and France have one on a bilateral level for nurses, for instance, but we could develop this and to make sure that we have them in more places. But again, we need, the Commission can organize this and we can write all the nice rules in the world about this, but if member states are not willing to contribute and to receive these people, then it will only be a nice paper. So this is something that I'm very aware of the problem that you're outlining, and we are trying to work on this. On the common European asylum system, absolutely, this is something that probably takes 70% of all my working time, to work on the establishment of a common European asylum system. You know that there are a lot of directives on the table. The member states at the highest level, the heads of states and prime ministers have said in 2012 we should have a decision on a common European asylum system. Now, we are, as you say, very far from this, and the level of whether you are accepted as a asylum seeker or not varies a lot. And in the same union, with the same Geneva Convention, based on the same values, it varies a lot. And once you get in, the treatment that you get varies a lot as well. So it's a sort of lottery. And 10 countries take 90% of the asylum seekers. By the way, many in the northern Europe as well take actually much more than the one in the southern Europe. That means that 17 countries could do much more if they had the administration and the capacities. So this is something that is a work in progress. We are negotiating the Council, the Commission, and the European Parliament. All the directives are open on the table, are subject to trialogue, as we call it. And we are making progress, I must say. We are making progress. For the Commission, it's very important to say that we raise the level of protection, that we harmonize it, that we take into account case law, because some member states want to go beyond case law, and we are working very closely with the European Parliament in this field. Dublin 2 is part of it. I think I have come up with my collaborators with 5 or 6 different versions of a reformed Dublin and the suspension mechanism. You said very few member states want to reform it. Yes, actually 25 do not want to touch it. So 2 want to. We can have a little questionnaire and see you can guess which 2 countries. So that has been very difficult. What we are pushing for right now is some sort of evaluation mechanism, so that we would evaluate together with the Asylum Support Office in Malta, evaluate member states' systems, so we can very rapidly try to fix the problems, to avoid those big deficiencies that are there today. So this is at a finalizing stage in negotiations. I think a few more weeks we might have an agreement between member states and the European Parliament, because I agree that this is really key to have. So there will be some sort of possibility still not to send people back if the state of human rights is so bad in some member countries. But hopefully with the common European asylum system in place, it will take years before everybody has it in place, then that situation will not be needed, unless there is a huge pressure somehow, because of course migration always depends on what happens in the rest of the world. It could be Southern Europe, but it could also be the total collapse of Lukashenko, which will bring thousands and thousands of people from Belarus coming into us, maybe if there is a violent riot there as well. So these things we need to make sure that member states are prepared as much as possible, but then of course solidarity, as you also said, solidarity must be a very important part of it as well. So we are actually making progress, I must say, but we're not there yet.
Hi, thank you very much for your talk. It was rather honest and I enjoyed that. Not that everyone else has been dishonest, by the way. Europe, as you mentioned, and a few other people have mentioned, it's an aging continent. Fine, I completely agree with that. But 2 things, to my knowledge, Europe might be aging, but people are healthier than ever before at the age that they are. So a lot of 70-year-olds are rather healthy, and the wealthy, compared to people a lot younger than them. So from a policy relevance perspective, and this will impinge on migration, is there any kind of way that we can use old people? Sounds like a strange question, but in other words, a lot of people I've worked with and research that I've studied, people don't generally wish to retire sometimes.
I think it's great that we're getting older and healthier, and that's certainly a very good thing. The problem is that we're having less babies. So at a certain stage, people will need to work longer. I'm sorry for all of you, you have to work longer. And we will have to make the necessary reforms for people to work longer and to take advantage of the knowledge and experience that elderly people have. But at a certain level, one might want to wish to retire. And then you must make sure that there is enough people in the labor force who can provide for the social systems that we have today. And with the current demographics, with 1 or 2 exceptions in the member states' countries, it's not looking good. So we need to do all this, and migration is certainly not the solution, but it's part of a solution with all the different reforms that we need to make. And we also need to make sure that more women can work, because in some countries the figures are really lousy there.
Hi, my name is Felida Souya. I'm a PhD candidate at Sciences Po Paris, and populism and xenophobic discourses feeds off the economic crisis. And as you mentioned, there are more and more, representatives of extreme right movements in the parliaments of different national states in the European Union. And the question, and even worse, you have sometimes some regular right-wing movements that are, normalizing some teams that normally are reserved to the extreme right-wing movements. And isn't it also possible for the European Union to lead a campaign of awareness about like basic facts about immigration, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there, notably that migrants come to benefit from the social systems in different European Union countries, and that and the basic equation of migrants equal unemployment for nationals is deeply wrong. Isn't it possible to kind of fight against the natural tendency of national states to have some electoral policies when it comes to migration, even if there is an ignoring the discourse of the academia at European level, where there are less electoral necessities?
Absolutely, and that's where the migration policies and that's where you come in. That's your task, to feed us with this. No, but you're absolutely right. First of all, it requires political leadership on all levels to stand up against these, because of course those at the very extreme are not really open for intellectual arguments normally, but lots of other peoples are there, and a vast majority of the people do not vote for them. A vast majority do not vote for them. So these are, of course, the people that needs the traditional center, right, left parties to stand up and to sort of contradict their agenda, their analysis, their agenda, and their solutions. But in order to do this, it is also important that we have fact, that we can refer to research and analysis, and this is a very important part of MPC, I think, to provide decision makers with this. But without a strong leadership on a political level, all these facts risk just laying there. So it's a combination of this. So you're absolutely right.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your speech. I was really pleased to hear your honest opinion about European Commission's work regarding migration. My question is related to your topic on student exchange, and especially on Erasmus Mundus. I'm very happy about its success over the last 10 years, but my question is, especially after graduation from EU-based universities, the prospect of graduates actually staying and getting work experience after that for a few years, that has steadily become a problem, and many member states have drastically, become more stringent about it and not giving chances to graduates. And plus, apart from that, visa facilitation issues for student graduates is another main issue that I was just wondering, could you please elaborate and just explain what the European Commission is trying to do in these two aspects, and especially in the coming few years, if you mentioned that the demography is going to affect and you need highly skilled migrants, but on paper it looks perfect, but when it comes to practice, what is the European Commission trying to do related to collaboration within member states and the destination country and the host country regarding student graduates? Thank you.
Thank you. When it comes to the visa issue of students and researchers, this is something where there is European legislation existing already, but we have seen that it doesn't really work. So you are right now in a consulting process, and I'm happy to get your feedback into this. It's an open consultation on the internet, try to identify what does not work with this when it comes to both students and researchers getting visa. So we are aiming to propose revised legislation by the end of the year. When it comes to visa in general, well, of course, there is visa obligations, and we have a common visa policy now. So we are working in trying to get as many countries on the positive list as possible. But this is subject to quite long negotiations and quite a lot of criteria. But we are encouraging member states to use the visa code to facilitate for researchers, students, businessmen, and others to come, to have more multi-entry visa, to have lower or no fees, to make sure that all the documents are equal for all the countries, and to facilitate for many in many aspects, because this is also a contribution with good people coming. The problem that you raised, that people come and they study at university in one of the member countries, and then instead of being allowed to stay, they are sent back. This is indeed a great problem, but very difficult. We don't really have the competence on the European Union level to legislate on this. It is very much up to the member states to use these fantastic possibilities that too few are actually having. I mean, ideally, if you have a job, you should be able to stay, but this is national legislation very much. So we can only encourage, we can only spread good examples, we can only sort of try to promote it, but at the very end it will be member states to make the decision.
Came to a natural finish. Well, thank you very much indeed, Commissioner. I think that was not only a very inspiring speech, but also your openness and willingness to engage in the discussion is much appreciated. Thank you very much indeed.